Hi guys, today we're going to talk about your provincial exam, specifically the written response question and the types of responses you can give. For your written response question, there's a few instructions that you need to pay attention to. First, they ask you to write a multi-paragraph response. Multi-paragraph means more than one paragraph. I would suggest a minimum of 3 paragraphs, up to a maximum of 5 paragraphs if you're writing a persuasive essay, or more if you're writing a narrative or descriptive piece. You can build on your own experience for your topic, experience of others, readings you have done, your imagination, or any other aspect of life. So you're really not limited in your topic as long as you bring it back somehow to the prompt. Speaking of the prompt, you have the option of agreeing or disagreeing. You can take either side as long as you deal with the prompt in some way. It's really important that you plan your writing. Write an outline, jot down some notes, brainstorm, create a mind map, do something to plan where you're going to go with your written piece. It's important that you have the end in mind when you start. It will help you to be more cohesive, more coherent, and just to write a better piece of writing. The final instruction that we're going to talk about today in more detail is the type of writing that you can do. You can do persuasive, narrative, or descriptive. Or you can take parts of those 3 and combine them together. Let's talk about persuasive writing first. You've probably done quite a bit of persuasive writing. Most 5-paragraph essays are persuasive. You have a thesis, you argue something. You're trying to convince your reader to believe something or to take some sort of action. Usually they're arranged to emphasize the most important or strongest arguments in favor of the thesis. If your audience is likely to disagree with what you have to say, and you think you're going to need to win them over, you're going to want to put your weaker arguments in the middle. Start with maybe your second strongest argument, give your weaker argument, and then end with your strongest argument so that your reader remembers that point the most. If you think your audience will agree with your point, then it's a good idea to start with your weakest point and slowly build up to what's important. For the style of persuasive writing, you don't want to include every possible point. You want to pick the strongest, most convincing points. Make sure you set your tone early. If the reader dislikes your attitude, it's not going to matter how convincing your points are. They're just not going to agree with you. The tone of the piece could be humorous, it could be angry, it could be serious, it could be insistent. You need to evaluate the purpose of your writing and the audience and pick the best, most appropriate tone. Strong arguments are important, so you should be using facts and logic, but you also want to appeal to emotion, especially if you want your readers to take action or to feel something when they read your piece. You can appeal to emotion in your word choice. Think of words that have good associations or connotations, rather than words that have bad connotations. You also can create an emotional response by citing universal needs. For example, you can say something like, "We all agree," or "all people have experienced." Different personal experiences or made-up scenarios that the reader will be able to identify with. So that's a brief explanation of persuasive writing. Let's move on to narrative writing. Narrative writing is writing that tells a story. Short stories would be an example of narrative writing. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, you want to introduce your setting, your characters, as well as your conflict. The middle of your story will be the conflict intensifying, and by the end of the story, you want that conflict to be solved. Usually a story is arranged in chronological order, but something many writers do is use flashbacks to fill in any pieces that are missing. Sometimes a story will begin in the middle of the action and then flashback and fill in the rest of the story. That draws your reader in immediately and gets them really excited and wanting to know more. Most stories are written in first or third person. If you're using first person, you're using words like I, we, and having a first person narrator can help the reader sympathize with the character that the story is about. It really gives them a feel for that character. Third person will use words like he, she, they, it. They're more objective, but they can have a broader view of the action and give a better overall sense of what's going on in the story. Another way to heighten the suspense and to draw your reader in is by using foreshadowing. Foreshadowing can also create a sense of unity. If something happens in the beginning of your story and then we see the result later on during the end of your story. In addition, you want to use dialogue to add interest and variety. It's important for the reader to hear your character's voice. It's important for you to know how to use dialogue correctly. Make sure you know how to use the proper punctuation, start a new paragraph each time the reader changes, all of those grammatical things that go along with dialogue. The final thing with narratives is to watch your pacing. Moving too fast or too slow is going to create a story that doesn't really grip your reader. So you have to hold your reader's attention by moving along quickly enough. Because if the story moves too slowly, the reader will lose interest. But you don't want to go too fast. You need to make sure the reader has time to pick up on all of the details and get all of the information necessary to understand what you're trying to communicate. So that's a brief overview of narrative writing. The final type of writing we're going to talk about today is descriptive writing. The purpose of descriptive writing is to create an image or impression of a person, place, thing, or idea. One way to organize descriptive writing is spatially. For example, you could think about looking into a room and starting at the left side of the room and moving to the right side of the room. Or you could think if you look into a room and there's a really important feature like a fireplace, and then move to the surrounding area around that fireplace. Another way to organize descriptive writing would be in order of importance or prominence. For example, if you're looking at a person's face and they have a very distinct nose, you might talk about their nose first and then move to their eyes and then move to their hair. So it would be what you would see if you were looking at someone. What would stand out to you first? So those are the two main ways that descriptive writing are organized. For the style of descriptive writing, you really want to make sure that you're appealing to as many of the senses as possible. So we're looking at sight, we're looking at hearing, touch, taste, smell, all of those things that somebody would experience if they were actually in the moment. Similes, metaphors, other forms of figurative language are also helpful for your reader. It evokes images for them, and it just gives them more ways to think about what you're writing about. Make sure you include any important details, but they do need to be related to the overall theme or impression you're trying to create. You don't want to just create a list of smells and senses and just random details. They do need to be connected some way. So that's a very quick overview of the 3 types of writing that you can use for your provincial written response question. I hope that was helpful, and we'll talk about this more in class. Make sure that you fill in the worksheet that you've been given by your teacher. Thanks.